In a digital world filled with genuine dangers, where is that line between responsible parenting and an invasion of privacy? There is no true privacy online, but your kids do want to have some form of privacy. They don't want you reading everything that they're going through. So today's topic is about where that line is between responsible parenting and invading your child's privacy. One of the most common complaints teens have about parental controls and monitoring is the lack of privacy. Now, I always say that there is no such thing as privacy online in the day of 2026. I mean, I said this in 2025 and I said this in 2024 and et cetera, et cetera. But the problem with thinking that you have privacy online is that you don't. Whether you have friends that screenshot your direct messages and share them with people, or your browsing habits are tracked on not only your computer, but across your social media, and even with the conversations that you might have with other people. I mean, I know I'm not the only one that has had a conversation about a product or something that they were looking into, and then suddenly start getting ads about that specific product. So whether we're out in public or in the privacy of our own home, there really is no online privacy anymore. I mean, the joke is that Facebook and Meta and Google and everybody else knows more about you than maybe your best friend. So my big argument back is usually, since you don't have privacy online and nobody does, it's not going to be private from me who is trying to keep you safe. And the comeback is always, well, don't you trust me? And I always say, seatbelt laws are not in place because the government doesn't trust us to stay seated in our car. They are in place to help protect us if something happens. So parental controls and monitoring are the same kind of thing. It's not that we don't trust you to be appropriate online. It's that we want to keep you safe from the things that we know are out there that could be damaging. And it's not just predators and bullying. It is all of the other things. It is your future job opportunities because of something you posted online. It is all of those things that parent can kind of see the bigger picture for. So again, it's not about trust. It is more about keeping you safe. So when my son was little, I did have some pretty strict monitoring tools and management on his devices. Now, one of the times I got an alert that he was looking up inappropriate content. And once I looked into it, it was obviously very benign. He was searching for bouncy balls, and that was flagged as something that was inappropriate. So I called my son in and say, hey, you got flagged for inappropriate searches. And he's like, no, I swear I haven't been doing anything. And we looked at the alert and it said the bouncy balls, and we had a good laugh. Well, this interaction did two things. First, it did show that I was monitoring. I was looking up what was happening and knowing what was going on his devices. Now, we had agreed to this monitoring to begin with when he got his device. So this wasn't going to be a surprise to him that I was looking, because I don't think you should do it behind their back or sneakily. Make sure you're doing it upfront and honest. But it also showed I wasn't going to jump to conclusions. When I saw that I got alerted that he was looking up something inappropriate, I was going to do some research and dig a little deeper to see exactly what was going on. So now, when I was a kid, we used to pass notes in school. I had an entire drawer full of notes from my friends that I had collected over the years in school. We didn't have cell phones, so we weren't texting each other. We were passing paper notes back and forth. Now, you could have some semblance of privacy with those notes. My mom could have gone into my room and unfolded all of the notes because they were all intricately folded, but she didn't do that. And I had this drawer full of notes that I would pass. Now, the one time that this note got me in trouble was I was in my math class and I was passing a note to my friend about a cute boy in the class that I really liked. And Wayne's World was around at the time. And so in the note, I spelled out who he was and what his name was. And I said, he will be mine. Oh, yes, he will be mine. And that is a quote from Wayne's World. And so the teacher caught us passing this note and read the note in front of the class. So the whole class got to hear how much of a crush I had on this kid who was also sitting in class. So not only was I super embarrassed, we did end up getting together, but as most junior high romances, it probably lasted maybe 1 or 2 months tops. So back in the day, parenting looked so much different. We would have to come home when the streetlights turned on, or your parent had to roam around the neighborhood and find the house with all the bikes in front of it to find out where you were. Now, because I'm Gen X, we had a lot of hands-off parenting in our life. We were the latchkey kids, right? We would come home with a house key because nobody was home to greet us. So I think a lot of Gen X parents and maybe even elder millennials have kind of swung the pendulum the other way. And now we have gone so far involved that we are helicopter parenting, or what is also known as snowplow parenting. And with snowplow parenting, you're basically just getting rid of every single obstacle in your child's way rather than just helicopter parenting where you're just hovering over everything that's happening. Snowplow parenting just takes that a whole step further. So what kind of tools are we using to do this helicopter parenting and snowplow parenting? Here are some tools that are helping us surveil our kids these days. And whether or not you're going full helicopter or snowplow, or you're trying to be a little more hands-off, you might be using some of these tools already. So the biggest one is we are doing GPS tracking, whether it's an elementary school kid with a watch that has GPS, or we've got Life 360 on our child's phone, or we have a device in their car that helps track their location. We are tracking kind of where they are. Now, this goes both ways in our house. We have Life 360, and so it's on my phone as well as my kids' phone, so they can see where I am at all times as well. You know, I have gotten the occasional, "Why are you at Target today?" kind of text messages, because they are paying attention to where you are as well. We're also using social media monitoring software. This is like Bark or Custodio. This helps us understand exactly what is happening within social media platforms. So whether it's their Instagram messages or Discord messages or things like that, then we are monitoring what they're doing inside those platforms. You know, we also have smart home cameras. So my whole perimeter of my house has cameras set up so that I know exactly what's coming and going at all times. It'd be really hard to sneak out of a house that has cameras at every angle. And then a lot of times we're also browsing through their search history or their web history through your Wi-Fi router or through your data plan. And it helps you understand exactly what kind of websites and social media platforms that your children are using. So the big justification behind using these platforms is obviously first safety. There is cyberbullying that we're trying to head off at the pass or get proof of. There's online predators. There's so many online predators that it's so easy for them to find access to your children if they have certain platforms available to them. And then, of course, there is mental health. So we want to make sure their technology use is as healthy as possible, and we want to curtail some of that. So we're going to have some management in place so they only can spend a certain amount of time on different platforms. So these are the kinds of tools that we're currently using to help monitor and manage our children. So can all of these tools and constant monitoring erode the parent-child relationship? All you have to do is take a look at some of the comments on some of my YouTube videos, and you can see exactly how well parental controls go over with some kids. So just browsing through those comments, especially the one where I'm talking about how kids get around parental controls, they calling me a narc, or they're just like, "Oh, hey, thanks for the tips." So you definitely want to check out that video if you haven't seen that already. But kids are bypassing parental controls constantly. They'll buy a burner phone. They'll use different ghost apps. They'll use a VPN to circumvent any like Wi-Fi parental controls. They have a lot of tools at their disposal to get around some of these surveillance tools. So This creates kind of a prisoner mentality where they feel like they're not being heard. They could have anxiety over not being trusted, lack of autonomy. And that's why they kind of go through all these methods to get around them. My grandfather was a prisoner of war in World War II, and he would always say that the guard's role is to make sure they stay in prison, and the prisoner's role was to try and break out. And so when you have this kind of prisoner mentality, it's going to make you want to find ways to break out of that prison. And some of these tools not only kind of erode that relationship, but they give parents a false sense of security. So like I said, there's so many ways to get around these parental controls, and in that case, is it really safer to have the control in place, or should you just trust your kid to do the right thing? I mean, it's going to be a toss up either way on that. But there are some tech tools that you might have to question. Does this actually keep my kids safer? Or is it just soothing my anxiety? And so I see, okay, no alerts are coming through. I'm fine. But little do you know, your child has gotten around your parental controls and is browsing whatever they want. And now what you thought was safe is no longer safe. So the question is, are we teaching them how to cross the street, or are we just building a cage around them? And I would say it's so important to teach them how to use technology properly instead of just imprisoning them. So throughout my kids' lives, we go from surveillance to mentorship. And so from like 8 to 12-year-olds, we're going to have really high boundaries. We're going to be open about our monitoring. We're going to try and teach digital literacy. We're going to have really strict controls. And that's the world we're going to live in while we're teaching them these skills. So then from 13 to 15, we move that from a really high boundary environment to more of a collaborative environment. So it's going to offer a little bit more privacy and collaborative boundary setting. Okay, let's talk about how long you should have available to use the internet every day. And let's work together on these solutions instead of these are the rules and this is what you're going to go by. And then instead of just, reading all through all the messages and having high monitoring, now we're going to move to more of a notifications-based level of monitoring instead of just really deep snooping. And then when they get to like 16 through 18, it's going to be high privacy, an open door policy for mistakes. Make sure they're okay with coming to you and talking about the different struggles that they're facing online. And then you're going to shift from control to advice. So one of my highest parenting moments is when my daughter came in and said she was having a hard time concentrating on doing her homework. So she was going to limit the time that she spent on Instagram. I asked if she wanted me to install parental controls again so that we can curb that. And she said, no, I think I can do it myself. So she put on just the digital well-being and set a time limit for herself on the phone instead of having me set a time limit. So when they get into that 16 to 18 range, you're going to want to be mostly hands-off, be a sounding off board, allow them privacy, remove some of the monitoring tools, and have open discussions as to what you're going to do in the future to prevent any issues that have come up. So the ultimate goal of digital parenting these days isn't to monitor our kids forever and ever, but to build internal boundaries so they don't need external ones. So where do you draw the line between responsible parenting and maybe a little too much surveillance? I'd love to hear more about what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments. As always, I'm here to translate the tech so you can go live the life you want to. Powering down until next time.